Bobby starting off as a laughingstock and morphing into a person to be respected and taken seriously is perfectly symbolized in Pine Barrens when Tony laughs hysterically at his hunting gear, only to realize later on Bobby knew what he was doing and was the only one in the situation who came prepared. Since we're on the subject of narrative symbolism, I also like to mirror this with when Bobby is getting blasted by Tony as he slowly takes off his conductor's hat, symbolizing his subservience to the mob life which offers him very little at the expense of his natural disposition, which is a normal family guy who likes playing with trains. Tony's realization that Bobby is a capable guy comes in stages over the course of the show. Sometimes it's in moments of reflection, like when they both travel to Pine Barrens, or when they're both on the boat in season 6, which miraculously doesn't sink, and other times it has to be screamed down Tony's throat.
To be his age and not to be a captain. He works so hard for you, and what does he get? Merciless ridicule.
It does seem Tony's opinion of Bobby wavers up and down, dependent on whatever mood Tony is in, and just how resentful he is feeling at any given moment. And often Bobby is the target of resentment that Tony has for Janice or Junior. Bobby and Tony's relationship is one of the most fascinating of the show. Bobby's evolution from someone who Tony despises and dismisses to being his top confidant, pulling substantial weight, is fascinating. You know who had an arc? You're looking at him, asshole. There's even small moments where Tony starts to acknowledge Bobby, like at Livia's wake where he hugs Tony and says, "My father is very old too." Again, awkward delivery, as Tony's mother isn't old, she's dead. But you do get what he's trying to say, and Tony's reaction is one of mild surprise that Bobby is being so genuine to him. But as we all know, Tony was also extremely spiteful of Bobby, which really stems from a sense of jealousy. In season 2, Bobby represents Junior, so Tony lays out all of his abuse and insecurities about his uncle on Bobby. Bobby seems to have a good relationship with his father, who used to take him hunting, and crucially, Bacala Sr. didn't want his son in the life. Tony's dad was also in the mob, and he never used to do stuff with Tony, and Tony always resented the fact that Johnny Boy didn't make a life outside of the mob for his son. Bobby has a good rapport with both his own dad and Junior at a time when Tony and Junior hated each other. It's like Bobby and Tony are adopted sons of Junior, only one is in a better standing and the other is hopelessly jealous. Bobby and his first wife are also stable, unlike Tony's home life. Bobby didn't have to kill anybody to make his bones, unlike Tony. And Tony even has a flashback about it in season 6, showing it still affects him. Bobby marries Tony's sister, which comes with its own insecurities, as well as him being dangerously close to the throne. Even when Bobby marries the volatile Janice, sure there are problems, but even then his family life is better than Tony's, and the kids are very stable for children who lost their mother and had her replaced with Janice. Bobby is the happy wanderer type, which the show establishes Tony is fiercely jealous of. Bobby's heart is as fat as his ass, whereas Tony is always miserable. After Tony is shot and he's insecure about his manliness, there's a shot that lingers on Bacala playing basketball, showing us that Tony is actively comparing himself, his own fitness, to Bobby's. Over the course of the show, Bacala has been getting fitter, symbolizing his efficiency as a mobster but also Tony's resentment of him. Tony even copies Bobby's order at the diner.
Imitation's a form of flattery.
And we haven't even started on the Sopranos home movie scene, where Bacala punches Tony and the duo fight. Bacala the clear winner, though Tony was recovering from the shooting and Bobby did start it off with a sucker punch. This is at a time where Tony was already fashioning Bobby for a higher position. This scene on the boat tells us so. But rather than cause his downfall, perhaps the punch even accelerated Bobby's rise. Tony was furious, but on a subconscious level he would have respected that Bacala stood up for his woman, that this is a man worth taking under his wing, and he began loving him like a brother-in-law, and Bacala subsequently goes from strength to strength. Either that or his hand was played. If he came back to Jersey and reversed the decision to up Bobby, the crew would know that something happened and maybe Bobby would leak it that he beat Tony in a fight. But let's go back to it. Tony comes to Bobby's home invited, and as well as being a miserable narcissist who always dampens the conversation, think to when he talks about the drowned kid when everybody's relaxing, a trait he inherited from his mother. Tony slurs Bobby's wife, then repeats it after Bobby respectfully but defiantly establishes the red line. There's a lot of dynamics at play here. Maybe Bobby should have let it go, but you've got to give him props for decking Tony. Someone finally putting Mr. Type A personality in his place. In the culture the two live in, the mobsters see the women in their lives as extensions of themselves. If you insult their women, you're insulting them. It's like when Ruchi April says to Chrissy, "Give her your last name, then it's not my problem." In other words, I am Adriana's uncle, she is under my protection. Once you marry her, then she's under your subspecies. Tony beating Coco after his insult is another example, with Tony repeating, "My daughter, my daughter." It isn't just that it's his daughter, it's that it's his daughter. The clearest example is Johnny Sachs spelling it out for us when he tells Carmine Sr. he insulted my wife's honor, my honor. This is a matter of dignity and honor for the mobsters. Janice belongs to Bobby now, not Tony. It isn't so much about the women being hurt, but that they lose respect. Though I will caveat this by saying any man will feel angry when his wife is being so openly insulted, even if she has no problem with it and it's her brother. But when Tony made the first joke, it was about Janice. When he did it again, it was about Bobby. He essentially forced Bobby's hand. He was testing him. Bobby has already checked him appropriately, and ironically, it was Tony who got offended. But Tony goes in harder, and now it's either a case of losing face and doing nothing, or raising the comeback along with Tony's raised insult. It's like poker. Tony essentially dared Bobby to do something, and Bobby went ahead and did it. This is one of the great ironies of Bobby. Other mobsters consider him weak and unmanly, yet punching Tony, boss or no boss, after his wife is insulted is one of the most manliest actions in the show. In Arabic there is a word called ghira, which I can't find an English equivalent for, but it's defined as a word that encompasses the concept of a person's dislike or displeasure over someone else sharing a right or privilege that belongs to them. It carries a sense of earnest concern or zeal and can be seen as a form of protective jealousy. Bobby's punch was his ghira coming out in full swing. If Tony said that about another mobster's wife, even his own subordinates, it would have to be addressed. But I think a lot of characters would actually allow Tony to say whatever he wants about their women. They actually lack the bravery that Bobby has. Sticking with Bobby's unmanly reputation, it's interesting that at Karen's funeral, the other mobster wives are talking about how he never took a guma. They're practically creaming for him, yearning for a husband like Bobby. Why do you think Janice went after him so hard? She knew he'd never raise a hand to her like Richie did. Of course, with the fight, there's lack of clarity in the air as to what exactly the situation was. Is it a mob relationship here at the lake house, or a brother-in-law one? Family or family? If it happened at the Bing in front of the guys, Bobby would probably end up as the Decades special at Satrial's, but the situation was more two brothers having a fight, rather than a boss and an underboss. But no doubt, Tony relished exercising his power as boss, scaring Bobby, making him think he was going to get whacked and punishing him with the hit. Bobby beat Tony's ass, and Tony took Bobby's soul.